You're someone who likes to stay informed,
All right.
to get the real story without, drowning in endless news feeds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what we try to do here. And today, we're diving deep into something that's definitely stirred up some conversation. This new Trump golf tracker website.
Yeah, our mission today really is to look at what this tracker actually tells us. About the time the former president spent golfing, both back in his first term and in these early days of a potential new administration.
And importantly, we also want to explore the different ways people are interpreting this data, because that's just as interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we're mainly drawing from excerpts from a YouTube video. It's from the Ring of Fire channel, titled "Golf Tracker Shows Trump Has Spent 17% of New Administration Golfing."
Okay, and we should probably state up front, this source, the Ring of Fire, it definitely comes with a clear political viewpoint. Our job here isn't to endorse that, but to look neutrally at the information and the arguments they're presenting based on this tracker.
Exactly. So let's start with the core finding they highlighted for the new period. According to the tracker data in the video, in the first 28 days they were tracking for this potential new administration, 17.86% of that time was reportedly spent golfing.
17.86%, okay? And that works out to, what, 5 golf trips?
5 separate trips in just those first 4 weeks, yeah. That's what the video states the tracker showed at that point.
Okay, so nearly, what, a fifth of that initial month on the course? But the commentator in the video makes a point, right? That this 17-odd% is just the golfing time.
That's a really crucial distinction they make. Yes,
Yeah.
It apparently doesn't factor in other times he was away from, let's say, traditional presidential duties.
Like what, for instance?
Well, the video specifically calls out his trip to the Super Bowl and also a visit to the Daytona 500, remember that, where he took a lap in the presidential limo, the Beast.
Right, I remember that.
So the commentator argues that if you actually add in the time for those kinds of events, the total time away from, the typical work of the presidency in those first 28 days, well, they suggest it could easily hit 25%, maybe quite a bit more.
Okay, so that's the snapshot of the very beginning based on this tracker and the video's interpretation. But the tracker also looks back, right, at the first term.
It does. And this is where the numbers get quite striking, according to the video. Over the entire first term, that's 1,461 days, the tracker apparently found Trump visited a property owned by the Trump Organization on 428 of those days.
428 days out of 1,461. That's, wow, that's nearly a third of his time in office.
Just under, yeah. Think about it. It averages out to him being at one of his own resorts or clubs roughly every third day throughout his presidency.
And the video points out the implication there regarding taxpayer money.
Yes, the commentator mentions that, this meant Secret Service details, travel costs, all sorts of taxpayer expenses were frequently being spent at businesses owned by the president himself. That was a big point of discussion during his term.
And focusing back specifically on the golfing during that first term.
Yeah.
What did the tracker say about that according to the video?
Well, the video states that during those same 1,461 days, the tracker recorded 261 rounds of golf played.
261 rounds. Okay, so if you break that down,
It works out to about 1 round of golf every 5.6 days on average.
every 5.5 days or so, a round of golf, that does suggest a pretty regular habit.
It certainly paints a picture of consistency, yes. Now, what's really fascinating, and where the YouTube commentary takes a turn, is how the commentator now views all this golfing.
Right, because they acknowledged they used to criticize it heavily, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. The video explicitly mentions this, reflecting on the first term, saying, they produced plenty of segments focusing on the golf trips, often implying it showed he wasn't dedicated to the job, wasn't taking it seriously.
Sort of the standard criticism you heard at the time. Look how much he's golfing.
Exactly. But now, the perspective presented in this new video is, well, it's a complete flip.
A flip? How so?
Instead of criticizing the amount of time spent golfing, the commentator is now arguing that maybe it should actually be encouraged.
Encouraged. Okay, that's unexpected. What's the reasoning there?
Well, the logic, as presented, is kind of straightforward, if a bit provocative. The argument is essentially when Trump is on the golf course, he is not doing other things.
Other things that this particular commentator finds problematic.
Precisely. The video suggests that while he's golfing, he's presumably not in the Oval Office signing executive orders they disagree with. He's not having discussions about what they frame as controversial foreign policy ideas.
They list some specific examples, don't they?
They do. Things like taking over Canada or the Panama Canal, Greenland. The Gaza Strip idea is attributed to him that the commentator clearly opposes. And crucially, they argue he's not actively working on expanding his business empire while he's playing golf.
So it's almost like a harm reduction argument. The golfing, while maybe not ideal in itself, is preferable to the alternative actions he might be taking.
That seems to be the core of it, yeah. From this commentator's viewpoint, it's the lesser of two perceived evils, which leads directly to their rather striking conclusion.
Yeah.
The video actively calls for Trump to play as much golf as possible. They even joke about buying gift certificates for his courses to help him do it.
Seriously. Buy him gift certificates.
So, it's said with a sarcastic tone, clearly, but the underlying message is serious from their perspective. More golf means less time for what they see as potentially damaging presidential actions.
So keep him out of the Oval Office, keep him away from D.C., stop him signing orders by keeping him on the fairway.
That's exactly the logic presented. The video even includes a kind of direct address telling the former president, go play golf, enjoy yourself, don't worry about the bothersome work of being president.
Wow. That is quite a U-turn. From he golfs too much to please golf more.
It really is. It's a fascinating example of how political calculation can shift perspectives, isn't it? The focus changes from the activity itself, golfing, to the opportunity cost, what else might be happening or not happening during that time.
It definitely provides a very different angle to think about how we evaluate a leader's time. So just to quickly recap the main data points from the video's discussion of this tracker. Early days of the new potential administration, nearly 18% golf time tracked initially.
Right. And back in the first term, visits to his own properties roughly every third day, and golf played on average about once every 5.6 days.
And the really provocative interpretation from this source is this idea that maybe all that golfing could be seen as, well, almost the positive thing, simply because it keeps them away from doing other things they dislike.
An unintended consequence viewed through their specific political lens.
It certainly leaves you with some things to chew on, doesn't it? Considering this data and these very different interpretations, how do we evaluate a political leader's time, especially time spent outside traditional work?
And what does this kind of information, particularly when presented by a source with a clear agenda, really tell us about a leader's priorities, their impact, and perhaps even about the priorities of those commenting on them? It's complex.
Definitely food for thought.